Grit and grace, that's how we grow. Step by step and child by child we know. There's power in the words we say. We lift the voices, light the way. Grit and grace, it's a journey we all share. For every child, everywhere.
Go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grit and Grace, a literacy journey. I'm your host, Gretchen Gadel. Alongside me, I have my mother and co-host, Angie Hanlon. Today, for the first time, we have brought on an international guest. Today, we have with us the captivating Kim Lockhart. So at this time, Mother, if you would, tell us a little more about Kim.
I would love to. Kim and I met on social media and then a friendship exploded from there. I would love to tell the audience about her. Kim Lockhart is an energetic Canadian educator who is currently teaching in French immersion and special education in Kingston, Ontario. Kim is also an instructor in the Literacy, Language, and Learning graduate program at Vancouver Island University, where she equips future teachers with both knowledge and skills rooted in the science of reading. And that's what we'll be talking to her about today. Kim is passionate about bridging research and practice, and she regularly delivers webinars and workshops and co-leads initiatives like a Science of Reading book club and literacy advocacy programs. And it's an honor to welcome Kim Lockhart to the podcast. Yeah,
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here.
we're thrilled to have you.
And I just have to say, Vancouver Island University, that's like the coolest name of a college that I've ever heard. And if I could do it all over again, I think I would go there just for the name. But
We
that's
need more
fantastic.
Gretchens at the university level. So maybe one day, Gretchen.
Maybe we'll see what the
I've been
future
so
holds.
inspired. I've joined Kim's class twice um, to discuss things with the class, and I've just been blown away. So, yeah, I can't wait to hear more about your work there.
Yes. All
Awesome.
right. So on that note, let's go ahead and dive in. Kim, if you will, tell us a little bit about your own literacy journey and what led you to focus on teacher preparation and evidence-based instruction.
Great question to start with. I think my literacy journey probably started very much like everyone else's literacy journey. I actually did a 5-year education program here in Ontario, Canada. We call it concurrent education, where you do your undergraduate degree concurrently with your education degree. So it was a unique program in the sense that I had 5 years of education training and not just 1 year of education training. And then shortly after graduating, back in 2001, I became a classroom teacher. And what I always found interesting about being a classroom teacher was that I always had 4 or 5 students who just weren't learning in the way that I was teaching. And I say it that way because at the time I thought maybe something was wrong with the child. Maybe they needed a psycho-ed assessment. Maybe there was a learning disability that was undiagnosed. But all I knew was they weren't learning the way that I was teaching. And shortly after, about 10 years after being a classroom teacher, I became a special education teacher. And here in our school district, we call it a student support teacher. In different districts, they call it different things. But essentially, it's a spec ed teacher where I was tasked with helping those, on average, 4 or 5 students who were struggling to read in every classroom. And I would pull them into small groups and I would use all of the tools in my toolbox, so to speak, to try and support these students with their reading. But I learned very, very quickly that I didn't have any different strategies or any different instructional approaches that these students needed. And the small group instruction just wasn't enough. In fact, what I was essentially doing in the small groups was I was reinforcing the strategies that were ineffective in the regular classroom environment. What these students needed was a different form of instruction. So that led me to having more questions than answers. So I went and I did my master's degree at the local university. And that was really a turning point in my career because I learned the research on how the brain learns to read. I learned this amazing term called phonemic awareness that I had never heard of before. I learned the importance of phonics instruction, that explicit letter sound correspondence instruction. And I just learned that there is a plethora of research that I just had never been exposed to. So then, of course, I was inspired to do more training, and I went on to do my Orton-Gillingham training, and that really was mirroring the research with the classroom practice, that explicit, systematic, sequential instruction that students needed. And I just really want to reiterate that my Orton-Gillingham training did not just focus on phonics, because I think there's a lot of myths about the Orton-Gillingham approach, that it's phonics only, but really what it did was it taught me an approach that is applicable to phonics instruction, fluency instruction, but it did really focus on the decoding and word recognition aspect, but it also really taught me the importance of language and articulation and voiced and unvoiced sounds and how to teach students voiced and unvoiced sounds. And that was something that I had just never received in my own teacher training. So I took that master's research knowledge and that applicable classroom practice training that I had, married the two, and adapted it for my French immersion students. So it wasn't a program per se, but it was using my knowledge, marrying it with the classroom practice, and then translating it and adapting it for French second language learners. And so at this point now, I just really want to share everything I know with other school teachers in my school district and any other teacher who's willing to listen to me.
And you're doing a great job of it too. You're a
Yes, and
wonderful advocate
you're
for literacy and the
so
science of reading.
Well,
absolutely. And
thank
you're
you.
so passionate about making sure that teachers enter their classroom and that they have the skills to teach reading. What were some of your experiences that kind of shaped that passion?
Well, I mean, I think it was not having answers to questions that I felt were fundamental for every single classroom teacher. And in fact, in my university stream, I focused on special education because I always knew I wanted to help students with learning disabilities. But I never learned about the reading research that I now know and that I needed to be an effective special education teacher. And we often hear the word equity and closing the equity gap. Well, one of the best ways to close the equity gap is to teach students the foundational skills they need. And what I realized very quickly was not only were the privileged becoming more privileged in our public education system, but also there was this equity gap with teachers too. I was in a very fortunate position where I was only working half time, and so I was able to have the financial resources to afford to do my master's. Not I recognize not every teacher can do their master's, um, and I also recognize the fact that I had the time to do it too. So really, what I wanted to do was share everything I had learned through this my ability to have taken my master's, taken my OG training, and share it with teachers who were not in that position to take all of that training, and share it with all the teachers across my school district, but also share it with teachers outside of my school district too. And so kind of what shaped my passion for ensuring that new teachers have this information is hoping that sharing it in teacher education programs, they're not going to have to learn it on the job like I did, because
Mhm.
working as a full-time teacher, which I did before having children, um, it is more than a 100% job. And so to do all this reading and this training outside of working hours really is an impossible task. So if we can give teachers this information they need when they are doing their teacher training, it's going to set them up for success when they enter the classrooms.
Absolutely. Yeah. Could not agree more.
Yes, and it's so sad that, we're seeing such a lack of preparation. A lot of colleges, they focus on behavior strategies and classroom management, and that's great. But at the end of the day, how are you teaching those essential skills? They're called essential skills because they are essential, they are necessary. And what are you doing? How are you sending these new teachers into the classroom if they don't have those skills? So we know that you are obviously doing incredible work at Vancouver Island University. Can you share what you've built into your language and literacy teacher education course to better prepare future teachers?
Absolutely. Well, first I was given the course description, and I felt like it was a good fit for me because I wouldn't feel comfortable teaching a course that didn't align with the research. And so, this was a wonderful opportunity, but I've also been put in positions where I'm asked to teach something and I'm saying, no, but this is not in alignment with the reading research. So I applaud Vancouver Island University and especially my director, Anna, because the course really was developed from uh, the most current reading research. And so I thought, yes, this is a good fit. And I was tasked with creating the syllabus. And so this was a new opportunity for me. I'd never created a course syllabus before. And so I collaborated with a few other professors and course instructors who were extremely helpful. And essentially, I went into this thinking, what do I wish I had learned in my
Mhm.
teacher training program? And how can I um, make this so concise that it just fits into one course and not a 5-year program? And so the original course that I was teaching, LLL 508, was those foundational reading skills, looking primarily at K to 3, not just word recognition, but the language comprehension too. So I really wanted to include the importance of oral language because I think sometimes that is forgotten. We think of reading being the phonics and phonemic awareness, but really those language skills, our speech and language pathologists are the experts in our education system when it comes to language. And so I wanted to make sure that I integrated the subset skills of oral language, including articulation, but also teaching and including the syllabus, the research as it pertains to phonemic awareness, explaining phonological awareness, but also explaining why we should be focusing more on phonemic awareness skills, less so on phonological awareness skills, and of course, phonics, explicit vocabulary instruction, syntax, which is often a vocabulary word that new teachers aren't even familiar with. It was a new vocabulary
Yes.
word for me. How can you teach syntax if you don't even know what syntax means? How can you? I remember having a conversation with someone in our new science-based Ontario curriculum, is that teachers now have to teach morphology. And someone very shyly said to me, but Kim, I don't even know what morphology means. How am I supposed to teach morphological awareness if I don't even know what it means myself?
Mhm.
So, again, it's great that we have a new science-based curriculum, but we need the teacher training because a curriculum alone isn't enough. And so, in my language and literacy course, the 508, I really was focusing on those foundational skills that I wish I had been taught, including the language. But now, this summer, in person, on campus, I'm going to be teaching the LLL 506 course, which focuses more of an emphasis on the language comprehension strand. So, the importance of content knowledge and background knowledge,
Oh,
the importance of explicit vocabulary instruction, that tier 2 academic vocabulary, but also looking at this through the lens of multilingual learners, because in the province of British Columbia, there are a number of multilingual learners. And we hear many, many, many different languages all in one classroom. So we can't neglect tier 1 vocabulary for our multilingual learners because they have to learn both the tier 1 and tier 2 vocabulary. But also, I feel like it's very important to also dispel some myths. And
mhm.
so, when I'm talking about some of the myths, there are many myths that are floating around. One of the most common being the 3 cueing system and how students should be able to guess words by looking at pictures. But again, from a multilingual lens, if you're looking at a picture of this woolly animal and you don't know the word mouton in French, you can't guess the word mouton if you don't know the word mouton. You're going to say sheep. So, really trying to dispel some of those myths, but also create some clarity about dyslexia, dysgraphia, and other learning disabilities that are specific to reading and writing because I used to think that dyslexia meant, well, dys means not able, lexia, reading, not able to read, but that's a myth. Students with dyslexia are able to read when provided with the correct instruction. And so I really want to dispel some of the myths that are permeating not just across Ontario, but across uh, many provinces across Canada, as well as many countries across the world, and help teachers understand that students with dyslexia have difficulty learning to read with a balanced literacy approach to instruction, but with explicit systematic instruction that's focusing mostly on phonics, phonemic awareness, and with lots of repetition, they are able to be proficient readers. And then finally, I think for me, one of the most tricky parts is not just teaching, not incorporating what teachers have to teach, but also using this opportunity as an opportunity to show teachers how to teach it. Because I think sometimes when we're just reading the reading research and we're reading what students need, we sometimes neglect to think about how it should be taught because we want to teach in a way that reaches the most learners. And so it's not just what those foundational skills and the what we need to teach, but it's also incorporating the how. Sorry, that
I
was a
love
very
that. And
long-winded
it's
answer.
such
Very
important
long-winded.
work. What did you say?
I said, I'm so sorry. That was a very long-winded answer.
No, it's great because everything that you're giving the students, it's exactly what they need, the what and the how when they get in the classroom. And that's what they're not getting in so many college classes. And we have to change that. So you're doing critically important work. So thank you.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so obviously, thinking about your students that you have that are eventually going to be new teachers, but then also thinking about any new teacher that might be listening or that someone might share this podcast with. What do you think are some of the key evidence based practices that every graduating teacher should know and be able to implement in their classroom?
That is the $1 million question. That is a loaded question. I could probably go on for much longer than you'd like me to. But this is my elevator pitch. Explicit instruction.
Mm-hmm.
In 2
Yay.
words, explicit instruction. But you said evidence-based practices, plural. But explicit instruction when it comes to articulation of speech sounds. Like, watch how my throat vibrates, my vocal cords vibrate when I say the sound. Can you do that? Because students can't just do things automatically because they can hear it. They have to see it. They have to feel it. They have to understand it. They have to, work with it. And so that explicit instruction is going to set more students up for success. Are most students going to be able to say, or most students going to be able to blend k at cat? Many will, but explicit instruction is going to reach more students. And so, when it comes to evidence-based practices, we know from the reading research, and Zach Groschel is one of the first people to preach explicit instruction. Just tell them, because discovery learning is really going to benefit and work for the students who are already coming with some knowledge. And those are going to be the students who are going to be, the golden star students raising their hand because they already know the answer. What we want to target are the students who don't yet know the answer. And so explicit instruction is important for different reasons. Number one, it's going to reach more learners. Number two, it's going to avoid having the same students who've already come with the background knowledge and the answers raising their hand all the time, which is going to be quite frustrating for the students who haven't been taught that at home or who don't have access to private tutors. But also, when we ask the students to provide an answer, we are running the risk of them providing the wrong answer. And so I was chatting with someone the other day, and if you ask the students, okay, who can tell me what is photosynthesis? You might have one or two students who'll be able to explain what photosynthesis is, but then you might have another student who raises their hand very confidently and says, it's when you take pictures with your camera. Well, photo, it's a good guess, but now we have to backpedal and we say, nope, that's wrong. Photosynthesis is, and we have to correct them. And what I have found from 20 plus years of teaching myself, 24 years of teaching, is students remember the incorrect answer. And they're going to hold on to that incorrect answer, and then we're going to have to backpedal and remind them of what the correct answer is. So we might as well just give them the correct answer to begin with. And I often do that, or I used to do that. Who can tell me what this letter is? And if it's the letter B, someone might say, the letter D. I was like, no, that's wrong. This is the letter B. And for the next 5 days, when I showed that letter, they're going to say D because they remember the first answer that came to them. And eventually I'm going to have to to give them the explicit instruction. So I want to give them the explicit instruction from the get-go. The other evidence-based practice that I wish all teachers understood and even knew about is the importance of data collection and the importance of screening for prevention. And I still think that there are some myths or some misconceptions floating around about screeners, because screeners don't diagnose. Screeners don't diagnose dyslexia. A screener is a quick check to see if a child is at risk of difficulties. And so when I do, I use Acadians. When I do an Acadian screener, I can do a quick check on a child to see if they are at risk of future reading difficulties so that I can provide interventions immediately. So this truly is a means of taking a prevention before intervention approach. And I'm sure everyone who's listening has probably been on social media, and maybe you've seen the meme with a number of children at the top of a hill, and there's a fence, and there's an ambulance at the bottom. And I see screeners as being, and the meme is basically to say, let's build fences so we need fewer ambulances. And the screeners are like those fences. It can help prevent students from falling down the hill or failing in reading. It's an intervention, it's a prevention before intervention approach. If we build the fences, then we're going to prevent students from falling off the cliff. So, I do wish more teachers and teachers in training learned about the importance of universal screening tools, not just learning about them, but how to effectively use them. Because they are universal, we have to follow them with fidelity, and we have to make sure that the data is valid by following the script and doing them faithfully, just to make sure that data is valid, but also making sure afterwards and after we've done our interventions, we follow up to see if our instruction and our interventions are working, because time is precious in the classroom. Time is very, very valuable. We all know that we never have enough hours in the day. So why spend time doing something that's not working, that's not effective? And so if we are using an intervention tool, or maybe sometimes a program, which in French immersion, we rarely have programs, oh, here's you fly. Great. Now I have to translate that into French for my French immersion students. But we want to make sure that our instruction is working. And so we want to make sure that we are following up with that progress monitoring to see if we see progress with that student. And if not, what can we do to change? And one of the reasons, Gretchen, I love your mom so much is because she said in a podcast with the Melissa and Lori Love Literacy, she once said how important it is that the students, let's put the focus on learning and less on teaching.
Teaching,
So we
yes.
need to change the focus from how well have we taught it to how well have they learned it. Because we can have these beautiful lesson plans, we can have these beautiful bulletin boards, but if the students aren't learning, then all of that's being done in vain. So, Angie obviously articulated it much better than I did, but let's change the focus from teaching and put it on learning. And for me, that was another, pivotal point in my teaching career. I thought, yeah, I'm teaching it to the best of my ability, but if it's not working, then I need to change the way that I'm teaching. So just one last comment, we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure the students are learning, and never making excuses for if they're not learning.
And I got that, take the focus off teaching and put it on learning, from the work of John Hattie. That's where I got that from. Yeah, for visible learning, we take the focus off of teaching. It's not whether we've taught it or not. Doesn't matter if we've taught it or not. What matters is, have they learned it?
Okay,
Well,
so
thank you. Yeah.
funny that you brought up John Hattie, because as we've been talking, I've had this one instance from when I was in college stuck in my mind. So I had a college professor who thankfully was very patient with me, and she let me ask the hard questions. And one day I just raised my hand, and we had been talking in so many different classes for so many different weeks about Piaget and all these different, old men. And so I raised my hand and I was like, "When are we going to get to John Hattie?" And she was like, "What?"
Good for you.
I was like, "When are we
Good for
going to get
you.
John Hattie and Doug Fisher and these new researchers? When are we going to talk about them?" And she just kind of chuckled, and I was like, "Okay, thank you for letting me get that out of my system." But so what
I
I
just
love
had a proud mom moment. Didn't know you I
Absolutely.
if I'd known that, I forgot about it, but oh my goodness, proud mom moment. Carry on.
Well, thank you, Mother. One of the things that I love about you, Kim, is you obviously practice what you preach. So, how do
Yes.
you balance what you do in your own classroom with what you are providing in your college courses for these pre service, will someday be new teachers?
Well, I found this a tricky question when you first mentioned it. To be honest, I feel that teaching is just as much about teaching as it is about learning. And we have to remember how difficult it is to be a learner. And unfortunately, full-time teachers rarely have enough time to, take a snack or grab their lunch, or sometimes even don't have time to go to the bathroom during the day, let
Yes.
alone read, 700 pages. Like I love, where is he? Mark Seidenberg. But wow, those are heavy books. And there are some great books out there, but they're time consuming. And if you don't have the background knowledge, they can be very fatiguing to read too. So, teaching really is about trying to be a learner and remember how hard it is, how challenging it can be to learn new material, especially if you don't have the background knowledge. So, I try to, include podcasts, especially your new podcast, and integrate any opportunities I can to absorb more information, to take in more information, to grow my knowledge base so that I can share it with the teachers in my school district, and to save them. Again, I'm only a part-time teacher, so I've always tried to use that luxury of having being a part-time teacher to increase my knowledge base so I can share it with teachers in the classroom too. But not only am I trying to share with them what is effective, but I often try to share what is not working. And for some teachers, it's obvious. I mean, the first thing to come to my mind are the word walls. And the word walls are working for kids who can read, but the word walls are not helping students who have a hard time decoding or who don't know the word circle starts with the letter C because they're looking on the S and the S, right? They're looking for the word circle in the column with the S on the word wall. So, I try to share not just what is effective, but also say, you know what, this isn't a good use of your classroom time. Maybe you should do this instead. And one of the things that first comes to mind was the word wall, but also the number of hours that I saw teachers working on phonological awareness in the hallways. We had tutors coming in working on phonological awareness skills. And I was thinking, you know, this is great. Their kids are getting one-on-one intensive instruction, but we're not matching it to letters. And phonological awareness skills are not going to help their decoding the same way that working on phonemic awareness skills would. So, I saw these kids working so hard when the tutor said, say the word blueberry, say it again, but don't say blue. The kid would say berry. And, say the word snowman and say it again, but don't say man, snow. And these kids became really amazing first class phonological or syllable deletion experts, but their reading scores didn't improve. So that's where that data comes in too. So did their phonological awareness skills improve? Absolutely. But it didn't transfer to their decoding skills. And furthermore, these are French immersion students. The word snowman is in English. We need bonhomme. So, say the word bonhomme de neige and say it again without bun. Anyways, that's a whole other story. But I think it's important not just to be telling teachers what to do, because I think that's contributing to a lot of teacher initiative fatigue right now.
Yes.
Do this, do this, do this. Okay, I'm
Yes.
teaching morphology, I'm teaching etymology, I'm teaching writing now, I'm teaching syntax, but they're not letting the ineffective strategies go. So if you're trying to add blending and segmenting of words on top of syllable deletion, you can let the syllable deletion go. Focus on blending, focus on segmenting words. And teachers are like, oh, thank goodness, because I didn't know where I was going to find the time to do blending. No, if you have 5 minutes in your day, focus on blending, not on syllable deletion. So
Yes.
I think it's really important to number one, try and take in as much of the current research as possible. Number two, share it with others who don't have the same luxury of time to learn the research. And three, give ourselves permission to let go of what doesn't work.
Yes. I love that you said that because one of the things that we're seeing right now is sometimes I feel like teachers are getting lost with the idea, with the notion that learning to read is a progression of steps. Once you've learned how to add or delete syllables, okay, let's move on to the next step. We don't have to keep the first 16 steps. Nope, we're ready for step 17. And when you're trying to do all of these things at once, that's where you get caught in whole group. You're losing that small group instruction time. All of these are things that we've talked about in previous episodes. And especially if you have something that is truly ineffective, you should be able to have the confidence to go to your leader or to go to your team of teachers and say, hey, listen, the data proves this isn't working. And sometimes when you are the administrator or the instructional coach, that's hard to hear because you've purchased this curriculum, you've purchased this resource, and now you hear that it doesn't work. But we do truly have to be mindful and focus on the data. And if it is not working, pull an Elsa and just let it go. You know?
I love that. That's so great. And I couldn't agree more, but it does take courage and confidence and a backbone to speak up to authority. And, some people, I've heard the expression, you don't want to win the teacher lottery. You want to win the teacher lottery, but you also want to win the principal lottery. Or you want to make sure that you have a principal who's open to saying, I didn't know that, but I'm willing to learn more. And
Yes.
honestly, I am envious of people. My principal at my school was always willing to learn, and she always said, "I don't know anything about this, but I'm willing to learn. Can you share a book or an article with me?" And I found myself to be extremely lucky to have a school leader who was willing to learn, but I also know that not all teachers are that lucky.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so we obviously know that teachers are not entering the classroom prepared. So, this is always a touchy subject because sometimes you have college professors who don't know the research, which is a problem in and of itself. But what would you say to other teacher preparation programs that are looking to modernize their coursework and better align with the evidence-based literacy instruction?
So this is your second $1 million question. This is also a very difficult question, I find, and I honestly, I think I've thought about this a lot, and I still haven't come up with a concise, succinct answer. So I apologize for the mumble jumble, but I believe that most university professors probably have a PhD. And when you do a PhD, you are an expert in a very specific field. And there is no doubt you are an expert in that field. However, classroom teachers and practitioners do not have the luxury of being an expert in one field. We have to be a jack of all trades. We have to know enough about phonemic awareness and phonemic awareness research and phonemic awareness instruction and what to do when the child isn't learning it, as well as phonics, as well as vocabulary, as well as morphology, as well as etymology. Imagine spending your 4 years of your life working on your PhD in morphology instruction for second language learners. Like, that is a very small niche. And so I think sometimes our university professors are coming in with expertise, but they are experts in one area, but sometimes what we need is a jack of all trades. And so I think in the ideal world, in the ideal university setting, we would have teacher training programs being taught by teachers who do have some classroom practice, but also have the research and knowledge base that they need, because they know that being an expert on morphological awareness for second language learners is not going to be enough to teach grade 1. We have to be a jack of all trades, and we are probably not going to be a master in any, but with a lot of practice and learning and reading and listening, we can hone in on those reading process instructional practices. But I think at the university level, it would be beneficial to have more university instructors who have that classroom practice as well. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, I want to be very careful and mindful of the fact that this could be taken out of context, because we do have classroom teachers who they retire and they graduate from their career, they retire and they go and teach in the faculties of education. But then sometimes that's perpetuating all they know, which is a balanced literacy approach. And so in the perfect world, right now, what I see is we have university professors with a PhD who have a very, very narrow research focus. And we have retired classroom teachers who are teaching what they were taught and how they were trained. And that's just perpetuating an ineffective approach to reading instruction. So what we need to do is we need to have classroom teachers who know the most current reading research. They know who John Hattie is. They know who Anita Archer is. They know who Louisa Moats is. They know who Angie Hanlon is. They know who, the experts, the trustworthy experts are in the field. But we need some of those people to have the classroom practice too. And I mean, now I'm really going out there, but that's one of the things I admire most about you, Angie, is that you have walked the talk. You aren't just telling teachers what to do, but you are showing them how to do it. And that truly is not something that we find enough in faculties of education, because sometimes in faculties of education or university teaching programs, we call them faculties of education here, we have people who know the research, but they've never actually had to implement it. Whereas when you're talking about data collection, when you're talking about progress monitoring, when you're talking about those intensive interventions, it's not because you've read an article, it's because you've done it. And I think it's really powerful to see those two. And I do often make parallels to the medical profession. My parents were both in the medical profession. They were pharmacists. And, they had the knowledge and the training, which, by the way, they had to keep up every single year. They did not go 30 years without, staying on top of the medical and pharmaceutical research. It has thankfully changed a lot over 30 years. But they had the knowledge, but they also had the pharmacy dispensary practice too. And I think we need more of that in faculties of education.
Absolutely. So, we've talked about what it would ideally look like in the college or university setting. But now, what role can school districts play? How can they close this gap between college preparation and classroom realities for new teachers?
So that's a great question. And I have actually worked with a few school districts here. I was trying to think, mostly in Ontario, school districts who are trying to create more collaborative work, more building bridges with their local faculties of education. One of the school districts that I was working with earlier this year in the fall was the Waterloo Region District School Board, and they reached out to the local university, which is Laurier University, which graduates hundreds of teachers every year from their faculty of education. And what they did was they brought in some of the associate teachers who are in the school district, and they brought in the new and incoming teachers, and they were talking about what those associate teachers wish these incoming teachers, the knowledge they had, because sometimes the incoming teachers are saying, oh, so I'm going to do this and this and this. And the associate teachers who may have some science of reading training might say, no, we don't do that anymore. This is what we need to do. We need to focus on blending sounds because that is the precursor to decoding. I've also been working very closely with the university where I graduated, Trent University, and they are creating this amazing partnership. Trent University's Faculty of Education is creating this amazing partnership with the local school district to ensure that they are graduating teachers who have the knowledge required to feel and be successful in the classroom. Because I feel that after a year or two of teacher training, teachers are going in confidently and then realizing they don't have the skills they need to be successful. And that's putting a lot of onus on the school districts. The school districts, more so than ever before, are in charge of teacher training. And
Yes.
so, what school districts should be doing is maintaining teacher training, not undoing the training they had last year and then telling them what they need. And so, we need to make sure that we are building these bridges to make sure that the faculties of education are teaching and training teachers with the skill set they need so that the school district can hire teachers who are going to effectively teach reading and spelling and writing. And I just think that it's really important for faculties of education to acknowledge that the classrooms are more diverse than ever before, too. And so when we are telling teachers, oh, if the child isn't reading, tell the parents that they need to read at home to the child before bed. Well, one, reading to a child is not going to teach them to decode any more than listening to Mozart is going to teach you how to play Mozart. Listening to it is going to be a lovely experience, but it's not going to teach you the technicalities to be able to do it independently. And secondly, I feel that because we are teachers and a lot of us learn to read and spell quite easily, we have to remember that we are not the majority of students, and not all students that we teach are going to learn as easily through osmosis as we did. And do we have the skill set to help them? And again, coming back to an Angie Hanlonism, no excuses, right? No excuses. We can't say, well, the parents aren't reading to them at home, therefore they're having reading difficulties. Because, truth be told, there are a lot of parents out there. I'm old enough where I'm teaching the children of previous students. We failed them. So if we didn't teach the parents how to decode and read, I can't ask them to now read to their child before bed. And all that's really doing is perpetuating the equity gap and the educated parents who are literate, the knowledge, but the children who come from families whose parents aren't literate or who have nighttime jobs or who have shift work. I have a lot of students whose parents work till midnight and they don't see them at night before bedtime. I cannot put that responsibility on parents. And so I think it's really important that faculties of education and teacher training programs work together, not just to make sure that teachers are effectively trained, but to stop dispelling some of these myths too.
As a
Yes.
principal, as a building principal in Missouri, I saw that our teachers from the local university were not being trained in the science of reading. So I reached out. I'm like, this has to stop, and we were spending so much time then investing professional development in our new teachers. So we had to completely change the way we trained new teachers. So I reached out to the university and said, when they go through the literacy block, can you please send them to our school? Can you please send them our way and just let me and the teachers here who were doing all of this great work in the science of reading, and we were able to partner with them. And I wish more schools would do that. Reach out to your local universities,
Mhm.
partner with them, get the teachers in the classroom, let them see the great work that's being done while they're in college. And it was a great partnership. And then we were introduced then to all the great teachers. And our district ended up hiring so many of those teachers. I still stay with a lot of those
Wow.
students that were in those groups that came through our school, and keep up with their career. And it was again all in an effort just to help them be ready for the classroom because of looking back and knowing that I wasn't.
Yes.
Sorry, Gretchen, got carried away.
Oh, that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
No, I have something to add as well because I feel like this is a point that it's okay to spend a lot of time talking about because it's a big problem and it needs to change. And as you were both speaking, the thought that just kept coming into my mind was quality over quantity.
Yes.
Just because you know that you need to provide your teachers professional development, it's not a checklist of, okay, well, let's give them these 10 sessions where they're going to learn nothing. No, maybe it's only one or two, but they're deep and they're rich. And your teachers leave there knowing, okay, this is what I need to do in my classroom, and this is how I'm going to do it. It's just like what we talked about with those instructional strategies that are ineffective, that are not working. You probably shouldn't have a professional development day on them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just common sense to me, but really it truly is. And even when you think about the amount of college courses that we're making these new teachers take, quality over quantity. It's truly, I feel like it boils down to making sure that we are giving our teachers quality instruction so that then they can go forth and they can provide quality instruction to their students.
Yep.
Exactly. And more isn't always more. Sometimes
Right.
less is more, right?
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that comes down to that de-implementation. Let's get rid of what isn't working because more doesn't necessarily mean more effective. Sometimes less
Right.
is more effective.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we're winding down with our last few questions, Mom, is there anything that you want to ask Kim? Anything that you want to bring to light?
Sure. And what's some of the feedback that you've received from the students you've taught who have then entered their classroom? And how has the preparation that you've given them in the course, how has it made a difference for them? I know that you keep in touch with a lot of them. So, what
Yeah.
feedback have you received from them? Yeah, I love that
Well,
about you. So, what
and this
feedback have you received?
Well, this is off the script, but I have such an amazing relationship with the teachers who have been in my courses. In fact, we're having a reunion on August 8th. And so I
Oh,
reached out to them and I just said, I'm on campus, in a different province. Is anyone interested in coming? And like 90% of them are able to come. The ones who can't, it's because they are in another country or they are traveling, but I am so excited to catch up with them. So that to me is a sign that I'm doing okay things. But when you do ask about feedback, it's really difficult to say nice things about myself. So I'm just going to read some of the comments verbatim because I have a hard time just saying, oh, they said this and they said that. So this is, I just have a couple of quotes. The one said, Kim is an amazing instructor and I really enjoyed the course. The amount of daily readings and number of assignments was very, very reasonable. And then someone else said, Kim has great energy, dynamic speaker and presenter. She facilitated classroom discussions well and navigated the room to address sensitive topics and conversations. And I really like that comment because it can be difficult to hear sometimes that your current practice is not effective or worse, may be causing harm. And so I do know where this particular comment was coming from. We were talking about silent reading, and I just said silent reading is not benefiting the students who can't read. And so that was a
hmm
very challenging discussion that we had to navigate together as a class. And then a few other comments. Everyone said, it was a fantastic course. Questions were answered very well on topic, and assignments were all very, very useful, valuable, and directly reflected the key learning. So one of the things that I strive to do in the course is not just to create busy work. When I'm in my kindergarten classroom, I try to make sure that everything the students are doing has a purpose and it's valuable. They're not just coloring for the sake of coloring. They're coloring because they're working on their, crab grip and their tripod grip, or whatever they're doing. It's purposeful, and so I try to carry the same purpose through to the course assignments. And so everything they do, they can use in their class in the fall, or they can share it with other teachers in their community. One of the assignments we did in my last course, the one where you spoke, Angie, was all the students in the course, there were 30 of them, created a podcast pairing. So they had to listen to a podcast, and on the same theme as the podcast, they had to read a book, read an article, or maybe watch a webinar and create a podcast pairing to grow their own background knowledge of that specific topic area. So, and they've created some great brochures that they can hand out on open house night in September, talking about the importance of phonemic awareness, and it's cross-linguistic. So even if you don't speak English at home, you can work on this in your home language, and it's going to improve their English language skills, and like all of those important tidbits that parents and caregivers want to know too. But I also want to make sure that the tasks and the assignments in my course are as valuable as possible, and it's not just busy work.
So what's next for you? I know you're always doing something. I'm just fascinated by your social media presence and always keeping up with what you're doing. What's next for you in your literacy journey? Do you have any upcoming projects or goals that you're excited about that you want to share?
Well, I am doing something interesting coming up this coming year. I have a contract with a school district who hasn't hired me to do your typical presentation. Typically, when I work in school districts, I do a presentation, but they've hired me to actually come into the classrooms and model. And so the classroom teacher will be there. There's no release time. There is no, it's not a professional development day. It's not a PD day. It's not a staff meeting. But I'm going to be going into classrooms with a specific targeted instructional goal and showing the teachers what it looks like. And so, showing them not just phonemic awareness is important or saying, oh, phonemic awareness is important, but here's the routine. Here's how we practice. Here are some activities you can do to reinforce those throughout the week when I'm gone. So coming up this year, I'm going to be working with a couple of different school districts and going into the classrooms and not just telling teachers what to do, but showing them.
I love that. That's what we need. That's what teachers need. Not telling them what to do and thinking, okay, now go forth and implement, but showing them how, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it's like in your own classroom with your students. Oh,
Exactly.
I can't wait for that.
It's
Okay.
nerve-wracking because I have no relationship with these students at all. They're going to be like, who is this person sitting and telling me what to do? But I have some fun. I can be engaging. So
You'll be great at it though. You'll get them engaged immediately. You
I
teach very
will.
explicitly. I've seen videos of
Yes.
you teaching. Yes, you teach very explicitly, and children respond to good instruction.
Yes, they
They
do.
do.
They do,
They
no matter
do.
who's providing it. They respond to great instruction, effective instruction, explicit instruction, engaging instruction. So you will do great. Can't wait
Thank you.
to hear
I'm
about your
excited.
success stories.
I'm super
Can't
excited for
wait.
that.
Okay, well, this has been a lovely discussion and a lovely conversation. Go ahead, Mother.
Before I wrap up, can I ask like one more?
Absolutely, you can.
Okay, sorry. I always sometimes she wants to wrap up and I always get real tense and I feel like I have to ask permission. Sometimes she says, well, I guess she always says okay.
I do. I do. It's just, what in the South we would refer to as the Southern goodbye. You say goodbye about 5 times before it's actually the real goodbye. So that's all right, Mother. I love you for who you are. Southern goodbye. Let's hear it.
Okay, yeah,
I'm going to
I'm
embrace
so
it.
bad at it too. I do that to the kids on the phone. Okay. So the podcast, Kim, is called Grit and Grace, a literacy
Mm.
journey. Gretchen came up with that idea for the title because we've both lived that and we know it takes both. So, when in your literacy journey have you had to lean on grit, grace, or both? And then I'll ask one more thing and I'll wrap us up.
Oh, wow. Lots of questions. I love it. So I think and I hope I answer this correctly, and understand what the question really is, but I think I have had to show some grit when I received a little bit of pushback because I was doing things differently.
Yep.
And so I was doing them behind closed doors, but I felt very confident that what I was doing was right because I had just invested all this time and this money. And investment of time and money does not always mean you're doing things well, but the data was showing these kids were progressing. And so because I was doing things differently, it looked like I was um, trying to be difficult, or that I was like contradicting authority, or but I wasn't. I was just trying to get the kids to read. So I can sometimes have my blinders on, and I thought, well, I'm just these kids, I'm getting these kids reading, I'm getting these kids reading. So isn't that what we should be celebrating? But because I was doing things that was different from the direction of my school district, it looked like that I was giving the literacy team some pushback. And I didn't mean to. It was just that what I was doing was grounded in evidence, and it was working. It was the data was showing that these kids were learning not just to read in English, but to read in French too. So I did have to, and this was hard at the time. I had to take a step back and think, this isn't about me. This isn't about me. It's hard to know what you don't know. So I think for me, some of the grace came from saying, they are beginning their learning journey. I've been on my learning journey for 5 years. And so just helping coach the literacy leaders, really coaching the literacy leaders so that they could support other teachers who wanted to use an evidence-based instruction. Because when you have literacy leaders who don't know what they don't know, it looks like pushback because you're doing something different. But if we can help educate the literacy leaders, and I do this because they're at the top of the hierarchy, then they're going to be able to more effectively support teachers who are not doing things differently, but who are doing things effectively. And so really what we need to do is we need to take our, how can I say this in a graceful way? We need to put our egos aside, and we need to take a step back and say, I didn't know that. And I'm apologetic, but some of the best leaders I've ever had are those who have said, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. And
Yes.
so, and I think that is something that has taken both grit and grace on my part, as well as on the part of some leaders.
I'm so glad you shared that because I think so many people can relate to that same experience in
Yes.
their journey. I know I lived it. I know Gretchen had some of that as well. So the final thing, and I promise I'll be done. If you could leave educators, especially those just entering the field, but for everyone that's listening, if you could leave educators with just one piece of advice about teaching literacy, what would it be?
This is my second elevator pitch. So now I'm going down the elevator.
Okay.
And if you and I were in the elevator together, Angie, and you asked me that question, I would say all means all, and it's possible because I
Yeah,
have
look at that.
learned. I
I
have
love
the
the
book.
book. I love the book. It's possible in the back. Thank you. I didn't even pay you to do that, but thank you.
No, of course not. No, but when I read a good book, I'm happy to celebrate it. You don't go into education for the money. But I do believe that all means all. We cannot, even 5% is too many kids who can't learn to read, because that is going to have a significant impact on our society, on our community, on mental health, on the incarceration rate, on crime, on like the impact of illiteracy is too great not to make this a priority. And so when I say all means all, I give it my all every single day. I give every child my all, probably to a fault, because I have a hard time setting boundaries. And I know that about myself. But when I feel like I am not reaching a child as quickly as I would like, I find that really difficult. And so, but I won't give up until I know that they're reading in English and French.
Part of why we love you,
I
Kim
know
Lockhart.
we think it's hard enough just to get them reading in English, and there you are, English and French. I love that. That's incredible. And I'm so glad that you brought out all means all. One of the things that I have loved about this discussion today is Mom and I are in the United States, you are in Canada, and even though we are in different countries, we're in different parts of the world, we all have that same shared mission, that all means all. This needs to be a worldwide phenomena. Imagine all that could come if everyone everywhere truly believed that all means all.
Yes.
Well, your podcast is going to inspire everyone worldwide to embrace all means all.
I
Hope
sure
Hashtag
so.
all means all.
I hope so.
I sure
I know
hope
it
so
will.
too. So
I
I
know
think
it will.
today, my challenge for you is to share this information with others. Help get the word out there. Help people know that, okay, what we said today, what are two things that we wish new teachers could go into their room and implement? Explicit instruction, phonemic awareness. If you are unsure of what those things are, reach out, go to Google, find some resources, go to YouTube and see if maybe you can find some really good examples of explicit instruction from the classroom. Dig deeper and just, keep in mind that all means all, and we all have to do all that it takes to get to all means all. So, all right, everyone.
Takes a village.
It does. It does. It takes a village. So, everyone, thank you for listening or viewing this episode of Grit and Grace, a literacy journey. As always, Grit and Grace, a literacy journey is an Angela Hanlon and Associates production. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Grit and grace.